Well, hello, welcome to the Client Catching Podcast. Now, let's be honest, unless you're actually running a non-profit, you're in business to make money, or you've got a pretty expensive and time-consuming hobby, right? But if you're like a lot of business owners, it's likely that at some point it's felt like you're not seeing the full fruits of all your hard work in your bank account, especially in light of all the time and the energy that you put into it, right? And I find that this is often a reason why the dream of business can quickly turn into a nightmare. Most of us start a business, we focus on the vision, and we get pretty bored with the details, right? Things like working out finances. It's to most of us, it's frankly a bit dull, right? Or at least that is what I used to think. But obviously, how wrong I was, because there is nothing less boring than feeling in control of the money that you make and keep from your business. And today, my guest is going to prove it to you. Now, she is known as the money magician, helping 6, 7, and 8-figure service-based entrepreneurs find clarity in their numbers, increase their wealth, and take more money home from their business. She's a former financial controller for Goldman Sachs, where she was responsible for one of their biggest managed funds, and today she's got over 10 years experience running her online business as a chartered accountant, certified profit first professional, profit mentor, and income strategist. And seriously, by the end of this episode, you're going to realize that accountants don't always fit their dull stereotype. And you may even call yours up and ask why they don't look at your business in this way. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my guest on the Client Catching Podcast today, Annette Ferguson. Annette, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you so much for having me.
No, and thank you for joining me. And I had a bit of a rush start to the podcast. It's just sometimes one of those things when you're doing business online these days on Zoom and all the rest of it. Calls bled into the other. But I'm really, really excited that you're here because we've got something to talk about that I haven't covered in this show because, number one, it's not my strong point. It's not something I know an awful lot about. And but I also do appreciate how important it is, and that is basically knowing your numbers and knowing your numbers to the point where you are able to actually, as I said in the intro, reap the fruits of the rewards for the things that you are actually doing and putting all your time, energy into the business. So let's start by what set you on this path to falling in love with numbers?
Great question. So I never planned on actually being an accountant. That wasn't part of my grand plan. When I was younger, when I was at school, I knew I wanted to run a business. I'd come from a family of business owners, and I knew that's something I wanted to do. But the thing is, I never knew what type of business I wanted to run. So trying to work, I knew I wanted to go to university. So trying to work out what I wanted to do, I wasn't really very sure. And a few people said to me, well, why don't you do accountancy and finance? Why, that's a really good grounding for business. So you understand how the finances work. I thought, okay, that's logical. That makes sense. I'll do that. So that's what I did. After that, I went on to do my professional qualification for this exactly the same reason that, as a chartered accountant, I felt like that was going to be a great grounding to start a business. Once I'd done my professional qualification, I still didn't really know what I wanted my business to be. So as you said, I went into banking for a while. I worked in oil and gas for a little while, all in financial controller roles. And every time I moved roles, I wasn't wholly satisfied with what I was doing. And I knew at some point I wanted to have my own business. And I started to think more and more about what that might be. And I realized, hang on, the role that I enjoyed the most was my training contract, where I was an accountant. I was doing accounts for small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, and that I really enjoyed doing that. So it came to a point where I thought, well, hang on, maybe I just need to mix together this accounting stuff that I enjoy and also the running a business bit that I want to do. And that's basically what I did. I started an accounting firm, and the rest they say is history. But I started my business 11 years ago, and initially started focusing primarily on the bog standard accounting stuff, the annual accounts, the corporation tax returns, the bookkeeping stuff, the stuff that pretty much any qualified accountant can do. But what I started to develop a incredible passion for was ensuring that business owners can be more profitable. And the reason that that came about is because I'd been running my business for 4 or 5 years. And yes, I was generating, that six-figure revenue that everyone speaks about, that elusive number to reach. But I was taking home very little money from the business in reality. And I was getting a bit resentful of the position I was in. I just had a baby. I just had my son. And felt like I was working all these hours and quite frankly, not really making any money for it. And so I stumbled across at that point a book called Profit First. I love reading business books and always have. I stumbled across a book called Profit First and I thought, why has no one ever written this book before? This is highly logical. This is incredible. I implemented it straight away in my business. And I basically called up Profit First headquarters as well and said, I need to be certified in this. What do I do? How do I get there? So I was going through that process. You have to have it running in your own business first successfully until you can be certified. So that was one of the things that I had to go through, but I was doing that anyway. And I basically got my business from a point, as I said, where I was paying myself very little to 18 months later, my husband actually left his full-time job as a trader in London and became a stay-at-home dad. At that point, I was pregnant with our second child. And then my business fully supported us. So we went from a place where I was being paid very, very little to fully supporting our family within 18 months, all because of this journey that I've been on, basically. And so that is why I do what I do. And that's why I'm passionate about what I do.
I mean, that's a hell of a journey.
Yeah.
I think, and also one that I think that a lot of people can probably empathize and appreciate with, because a lot of us have been there. It's kind of like we're trying to figure out this thing that we do, and we start these things because there's an itch that needs scratching somewhere else and you're not quite fulfilled and all the rest of it, and you go and find the thing that you do and you're good at, and then you think, right, okay, well, I'm just going to go out and do that. So you do that, you hang your sign on the door and you just wait for people to turn up, and reality hits. It's it's not always like that, is it? And not only from the perspective of, oh right, I actually need to find people to pay me and find people that I can actually help, but also then when things do start to kick off, it's not always obvious that when you are someone that has a skill, there is actually an entire set of new skills that you need to learn and understand as a business owner that just doesn't exist in the corporate world. You don't need to think about it. And so many people don't maximize the profit in the business because they don't understand. They don't know what to look for. So when it comes to thinking about profits in a business, let's assume somebody's got a decent flow of money coming in. What are some of the first places that you look to actually help people increase their profit, which might not necessarily mean they need to actually do more business?
Revenue. Yeah, absolutely. So I think as we're growing our business, the natural assumption is that if we want more take home, we have to grow our revenue. That's kind of all the messaging that we get when we're, searching on YouTube as to how to get home more money or whatever that might be. Those are the messages that we get. Just grow the revenue, grow the revenue, grow the revenue, and the profit will come. But the problem is that the profit often doesn't come because the expenses seem to grow at the same rate. Every time you get money in, it seems to disappear back out again. So what I recommend that people do as a very first step is find and identify and eradicate what I like to call money leaks in their business. So what I mean by that is actually getting your business bank and credit card statements and going through them one by one and asking yourself two questions. One, is this expense 100% necessary to keep the proverbial lights on in my business? Or two, is this expense delivering me a positive return, either in terms of money or in terms of time? And if the answer is no to both of those, it's either not 100% necessary or it's not delivering you a positive return. The question is, what is the purpose of that spending? Now, it might be that it's a nice to have and you like it, and that's fine. But understanding with those nice to haves, that means fundamentally less money in your own pocket and your family's pocket. And it's a trade-off. And being aware of that trade-off is what's really important.
Yeah, and we can all sort of look at things and go, oh yeah, I really fancy that. I mean, we were just talking before all this, like I'd quite fancy one of these electronic standing desks, which they cost what, like 500 quid or something. You can probably get them cheaper on Amazon or something, I don't know, but
I think they're about that on Amazon too. I looked at an IKEA one the other day, they're about 450, so they're not too different.
That's where I was looking, but it's that kind of thing. You look at it and you go, that is a nice to have. I'd like that, but I don't need it. And I think, well, you spend that and then it comes out of the business and then, ultimately it comes out your pocket and all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, well, Christmas is coming up. Maybe I shouldn't do that for myself. Maybe I should sort of think, right, let's bring a bit more of that into the household and, make things a little bit nicer over, that period of time. So it's a micro example. It's, it's one of those, but it's something that I think all of us can really sort of think about. And, it's a conversation that is probably going on in our heads a lot more than we realize.
Yeah, and I think though there's often when people look at their business, sometimes they look at it in a silo and they look at it almost a little bit disconnected to their family's finances. And I think it's important to understand that these two things are actually interrelated. I say to people all the time as well, every business is a family business, regardless of whether any of your family members work in it. Because quite frankly, your business takes your time, your energy, and sometimes your money. And therefore, it's pulling all those things away from your family. It's either your business overall, when you look at it in the kind of macro, it's either giving to your family or it's taking from it. And you as an individual need to understand that that exists and balance that out, particularly I think when it comes to the finances side.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, because it's not always just, the finances is almost an obvious one, and yet it's not, because you think, oh, right, I need something in the business, I'm just going to go and spend it. But actually then you sort of, depending on the size of business, it might not directly impact you as an individual potentially, but, you've got to think if you're a bigger company, all of these micro decisions are being made along the way that will impact the profitability of the business overall. And that can impact, I guess, things like potentially bonus pay for staff, or even you as the owner of the business, or dividends, or depending on how, again, I'm not an accountant, so
completely.
You don't necessarily think, but if you apply this across, even from a one person company to all the way up, these little decisions, I can imagine, go a long way. And is that where you find a lot of gain for companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at those money leaks is where we get a lot of initial wins for people in reality. People sign up to trials for pieces of software that they never cancel. All those kinds of things actually add up, and they mean that, yes, it might only be £30 here or £50 there, but actually, when you put them all together, you start making a dent in these things. And, when you add them up, maybe that means you can employ somebody 2 days a week to help you. That makes a huge difference to your life. Or maybe it does mean that you take home that extra money and you start saving towards a ski holiday or whatever those things are. But actually, you can then see the positive impact of getting rid of these money leaks and redirecting those funds somewhere else.
Because that's a key thing there that you've touched on there. It's once you plug these leaks, you can then think and almost go back to your original questioning, which is, is this an essential, and is this actually contributing to the revenue, etc.? Because if you actually then think about it, yes, you can go and put it in your pocket, or you can think, I am going to divert the money that I've been spending on this area that it doesn't achieve really anything in the business, and I'm going to target it towards something that is much more focused on customer generation, revenue generation, etc., etc. That could be hiring a member of staff, which would allow them to do something that is, a salesperson, for example. It could be an advertising budget. It could be all sorts of things, which then goes on to add to the overall,
which then gives you a return.
Continues.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. And so I recommend that people do that exercise at least quarterly in their business, because stuff changes all the time. What is essential one year might not be essential the next year. What is delivering you a return at one point may not deliver you a return in 6 months' time. So making sure that you're regularly on top of this can really, really help.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, it's probably a lesson we could learn personally as well.
100%.
Look at, we are in the subscription economy, and that's been touted around, but look at all the subscriptions you've got, from Sky TV to your mobile phone to Netflix to everything else and all the rest of it. And we could probably look at that and go, ouch.
Yeah,
sure. There's an awful lot there that we can... especially with what's been going on and people are tightening their belts. That's one thing that I'm sure a lot of people have been looking at, and we realise actually we are... it's far too easy to just hit subscribe or hit a trial and then go and do, and then you get sort of taken onto it. So we could just learn from this, not just from a business perspective, but also a personal perspective. And yes, maybe go and talk to your other halves about doing something similar, because we could all benefit from it and actually do something positive that's different with that money. So one thing I think is interesting is you mentioned finding the book Profit First, and I'm interested to unpack that a little bit. For those that don't know, the book Profit First, the author's name is Mike, and I can never pronounce his second, Malkovich or Malkowitz?
Michalowicz.
That's the one. And if he ever listens to this, he probably will. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. But it's.
I think everyone does, so it's okay. I think he's pretty used to it.
Yeah, but he's written a number of books, hasn't he? And he's his business model is absolute genius, isn't it? He wrote Profit First. His latest one is Fix This Next, I think.
Fix This Next is his latest one, and I believe he's writing another one at the moment.
Yeah, and that business model is genius. He writes a book, and then he offers a licensing, doesn't he, to certify in the qualification for the strategy in which he explains in the book, which is what you did.
Yeah.
This podcast isn't about his business model. It's about how it's benefited you, and actually what other people can learn from actually seeing it. Because, by the way, you also mentioned that you read the book and then you called them up. Now, I don't know if they had any information about being able to get certified, but
they
you
did.
saw that.
Yeah, it's a little bit in the book that you can be certified, or rather, they say in the book something like connect with your Profit First, Profit First professionals. So they promote the fact that Profit First professionals exist in the book, and therefore that's why I was like, oh, I need to be one of those.
But not everyone will read that book in your profession and go, I need to pick up the phone and I need to call these, because this is absolutely something I want to be able to offer to more people.
Yeah.
It's the difference, I think, between people that sort of they'll stay sort of like in a comfort zone, and others that will see an opportunity and they'll go, I need to grab that.
Sure.
Is there something in you that made you do that? Is that come from somewhere?
I think probably is the short answer. I've always been someone who wants to not necessarily just look insularly in my industry to help support and grow my business. Basically, I've always wanted to have a bit of a broader scope than that, and I feel like we can learn from lots of other areas for our own businesses. So I think that that's always been something that's been on my radar. And therefore, as I was kind of looking and reading Profit First, I realized that it was going to not only impact my business positively, but I also realized that this could impact hundreds and millions of other businesses positively. And therefore, why wouldn't I add this as part of my toolbox, as it were, to the conversations that I was already having with clients? It just seemed to me to be a very natural progression in the conversation. I was already speaking about money with clients. We were already speaking about finances. We were already speaking about what they were taking home. This seemed a way that I could help and support that even further, to support their businesses. And when my clients' businesses do well, that can only be positive for me at the same time. It's a win-win situation. I don't see there wasn't any downside for me from that. So that's a big reason why I read it and thought, why wouldn't I do this in my own business? Why wouldn't I help other people do this too?
And there's a few things to take from that as well, in that, I mean, the benefits to you mentioned obviously the benefits to your business and all that, but you were focusing more on what you could, how you could bring that value or additional value to other people. So there's an insight into a mentality that's there that I think if more of us actually adopt that kind of attitude, we will see more of these opportunities when they present. I mean, however many people have read that book and then didn't go and do the certification, it's probably numerous, because it's a very well-known book. It's something that a lot of people talk about. I mean, if you listen to other podcasts, and his book Profit First is, when people ask in some of those lightning rounds, what's one book you'd recommend, blah blah blah, Profit First, it actually comes up an awful lot.
Yeah, it does.
So I can imagine it's actually been a smart strategy to align yourself
Yeah.
with that organization, that brand. What's it done for you as a strategy to do that, to get associated with an external body?
You're right, Adam. It has been a great strategy for us. I mean, we get people all the time in terms of leads and inquiries into the business because they've read Profit First. So either they've when you read the book, there's a URL in there that you can go to that says, if you want to find a Profit First professional near you, click go here. So we get leads coming in that way from Profit First HQ, but we also get people who are just Googling us for Profit First UK and finding us that way as well. And so, yeah, absolutely. We get a lot of inquiries and a lot of clients as a result of being Profit First certified for sure. The other extra bonus is that stuff's really interesting for us to do with clients. It's way more interesting than churning out a tax return. You can actually see the impact that it has on people. And that to me gives me a much more job satisfaction than here's your VAT return.
Absolutely. And first of all, I mean, this is an example again of like the power of aligning yourself with, something. I Googled Profit First, and you're on the first page of Google.
Yeah, exactly.
In the UK. Like,
yeah.
Everybody wants to figure out how to do SEO well and all the rest of it. Well, there's an example of actually aligning yourself with another credible source that is actually you can then tap onto. Completely. So it comes with that the authority domain, the domain authority and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
The other thing is that, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier on, is you didn't want to be that just a bog standard account and that kind of thing. And that's one of the biggest challenges anyway when it comes to starting a service business, because to everybody on the outside, you're an accountant.
Yeah.
You're a marketing consultant.
Yeah.
You're a financial advisor. Like they don't care. The end client generally does not care how many qualifications you've got. They just want to see that you've got the bare minimum, right? Like, okay, they've done that, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter that it's taken you years and years and years of work and effort to do that.
Yeah.
Everybody else, that's the cost of entry, right? Everybody else in the market has got all of those. So it's really difficult to differentiate you from somebody else. It's effectively commoditized, which is why so many people in these types of businesses, they rely on referrals as their primary way to generate business, because it's really hard to actually differentiate yourself. You found an amazing way to do that, and that in itself is a great strategy. And if you're in a position where you're in an industry that is quite commoditized listening to this, then maybe think about what Annette's done, and is there a parallel in the industry that you're in? Is there something that you can align yourself that will separate you from a number of people? Because Annette, you are the only Profit First certified person in the UK to do this, so that in itself must bring an awful lot of business.
And it does.
And it's a smart strategy. It really is. I mean, I think we sort of touched on before we hit record. I've done a similar thing, certified with Infusionsoft and ClickFunnels, and I'm still to this day getting inquiries from that side of things, even though I've moved away from strictly doing, the pure sort of agency side of things, and it's a little bit more. But those inquiries come in, I still generate business as a result, and I haven't probably touched some of that for a while. So anyone listening, as a strategy, as something that if you're struggling to differentiate yourself, look for something that is well known, that there might not be somebody in your, even if it's just your local area, or like Annette with, the only person certified in the UK of something that is well known and understood. Smart strategy. But I can't let you go without kind of, we've teased and danced around the subject really. What is Profit First, and what would somebody who is hearing this and going, okay, I kind of get it, but tell me what it is and what the outcome would be if I approached this strategy in my business?
Yeah, absolutely. So Profit First, as you said, is a book written by Mike Malkowitz, and Profit First, to all intents and purposes, is a cash management strategy. It helps you manage the cash in your business. So It can go fine alongside any bookkeeping software that you have, any accountant or bookkeeper that you have. You can run this strategy. There's no barrier with any of that stuff, because what it fundamentally does is it applies a concept called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law, which I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically says along the lines of, however much of a resource exists, we will consume it. So we all know that it works with time. If you have 2 months to do a project, you'll do it in 2 months. If you have 2 days of the same project, you'll take 2 days to do it. That is just how it works. And it works the same with money. So money comes into our bank account and then it seems to disappear. It seems to almost disappear as quickly as it's come in. You'll be expecting a payment in, and then an invoice will land on your desk, and it will feel like it's just consumed all the time. And often the business owner feels like they're living off the financial scraps of the business, just the money left over, the bits at the bottom. What Profit First does, it basically puts constraints into how you operate your bank accounts so that you basically squirrel money away into different portions and different pots. So it's there where you need it, when you need it. Very similar to the system that your granny might have used, whereby they had, envelopes, and your granddad would come home from work each week and she would take the pay packet. I'm being very, very stereotypical here, but I'm speaking about something that happened a long time ago. It was very stereotypical in that way at that point. And, the rent money would go in one envelope, and the food money would go in another envelope, and the extras would go in another envelope. This is basically doing that for your business. So what happens is the money comes into your income bank account, and you have multiple bank accounts. And then in set percentages, you put a certain portion into your profit bank account, taking your profit first. You put a certain portion into your owner's pay bank account, the money for you. You put a certain portion into your tax bank account, and you put a certain portion into your operating expenses bank account. And that's the money you get to use for each of those things. Now, of course, if you're VAT registered, for example, you're going to want a VAT bank account. Many people also have a team bank account if they have team and staff members. But the fundamental concept is that money comes into one bank account and you squirrel it away into other bank accounts to essentially keep it safe, to essentially stop the overspending and to stop the money leaks happening in your business.
It's just smart, isn't it? It just makes sense.
It's really simple and smart.
It's, I'm almost sort of like, I'm struggling to think, well, is there a way to make that more complicated? No, like it just makes sense. It's so obvious. And yet, like, I guess it's that Occam's razor thing, the simplest solution is often the best, right? And it just makes sense. Money comes into one place and then you distribute it to where it needs to go. And you make sure that some of that is actually in that profit piece.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Unless you do that, as you say, it can get churned up. And if it's in one bank account where you are paying out invoices from one place and rent and tax and and then it's like, God forbid you're actually using your personal account. Maybe some people are. It just gets swallowed. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got a text from my bank. I'm in my overdraft. How did that happen?
Yeah. Or your partner says, where's the food money this month? And you're like, oh, crap. I don't have anything to put in that bucket in our personal finances because I spent it in my business.
Yeah, I ate it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's brilliance in its simplicity. And
and this incidentally works regardless of the size of business as well. So whether you are a startup and you're at the very beginning or you're running a 7-figure business, this works. And we've implemented with clients across the spectrum, across all industries and across all revenue sizes and lots of different business models. It works because it's simple, and that's why it works across all the areas.
And if nothing else, there's a lesson in that. The simplicity of it to be able to clearly understand. And maybe that's why you saw the opportunity. It's like, this is simple. Like, I don't have to go and explain accountancy to people. I just have to go and explain this.
Yeah, completely.
And it will make sense. It just instantly makes sense.
And that's what I thought when I read the book. I thought, this is so simple. Why has no one written this before? Why am I not taught this in my accounting training? Like, why is this not fundamentally part of business? it just seemed to me so incredibly straightforward, and I couldn't work out why it didn't exist yet. And I knew that I needed to be part of, helping people to find it and understand it.
And I'm sure there's a few more nuances in there as
There are,
well,
of
and
course.
the things that you can do to maybe, I don't know, automate parts of it so you're not doing it individually, and that's where you come in to really help to streamline the process, and I guess stress test it and make sure that the right
Exactly.
proportions are going into the right. So
Yeah,
on the surface the idea is simple, but like with anything, when it's simple, it doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means it's simple. So there are nuances to understand, and that's what you help people to actually do.
yeah, exactly. Like you say, we need to work out individual percentages for different businesses, different business models, different industries. There's little tweaks there. There's also tweaks involved, if people want to and don't already have an emergency fund, for example, set up in their business. We're going to want to set that up and put some money into there so that that's starting to build up. Different people have different needs in their business. If you want to buy machinery in a year's time, maybe you have a pot for that. So we look at as you say, the nuances of that and get it working individually for each person's business, for sure.
Yeah, and I highly advise anyone that's listening to this and is thinking, right, this sounds awesome. Yeah, we'll tell you how to get hold of Annette towards the end, because yeah, you can go and read the book, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
you can probably figure it out, or you can maybe do something that has been suggested already. You could go back and look through some of your expensive, cut out some of those, and then
Yeah.
invest that into working with someone that can actually really help you with this and
Yeah.
set this system up. And that would be one of the real difference making activities that you could do in your business over the next 14 days. Like,
Yeah,
listen to this,
completely.
look through what you're subscribing to,
Mm.
save some money, and then either first go and buy the book, or save yourself the trouble and give Annette a call. I think that'd be a great idea. I think that's just a smart idea.
It is.
I'm quite happy to to say that, because it just makes sense. So before we let you go, when it comes to, obviously, because not only are you versed in the accounting side of things and
Yeah.
the numbers and all the rest of it, you've been doing this for over 10 years now.
Yeah, I have.
What's been some of the most surprising things that you've learned over that time owning a business?
Ooh, I think um I think one of the most surprising things that I'm a big learner. I already alluded to the fact that I love reading business books and all those kinds of things. But I think that actually, the thing that's made the most difference in terms of my business growth and those types of things is actually looking inward to myself and looking at my own development personally, not intellectually, but actually personally. So looking at my own, things like my own leadership, emotional intelligence, all those kinds of things. I think that has been the biggest surprise to me, is that actually when I started doing that real internal stuff, that's when things really kicked up in my business.
Yeah,
And I wasn't expecting that.
I don't think anyone does when they start, because I now say to anyone that I might happen to come across it saying I'm thinking of starting something or blah blah blah, and I'll often say that well, be prepared, because starting a business is as much personal development as is business development.
Yeah,
And
completely.
you will get a literal crash course, or have to take a crash course in understanding yourself,
Yeah, for
if you want to
sure.
make it anything sort of technical work, because
Yeah,
yeah, we are human beings, and that grey matter in between our ears has such an impact on some of the things that we do, and we can
completely.
self-sabotage ourselves in all sorts of ways. And I found that's an interesting observation, and it's amazing how often that comes out
Yeah.
the longer somebody's been in business.
I'm sure. I don't doubt that. Somebody said to me the other day, they asked a question in a Facebook group and they said, what's the best expense that you've ever made in your business? And I said, therapy. Like, seriously, therapy. Because actually, once I got to understand myself and my thoughts and how my brain works, actually, that's where the advances have come.
Yeah, therapy, mentorship, coaching, all those kind of things. And
Yeah.
you sort of do a little bit of that as well. So you sort of run the
Yeah.
fractional CFO sort of service and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that you've also been able to productize what you do to a degree, and taken what is a dull industry for
That's okay.
in other people's I'll just say it, a frankly boring industry that nobody really is interested in, but is essential, and you've been able to productize it to a point where people are coming in and actually doing things with you rather than it being all about you as the provider, and that in itself is worth taking a look at, because it's a great example. And I've covered people coming on and discussing how to do that, but just from someone that's been through that process, what did that process look like for you to take that path of actually sort of productizing and putting some leverage into a business?
Yeah, I think when I was going through it, I didn't really realize what I was doing, if that makes sense. I didn't really realize those are the steps I was taking. But I did it from a perspective of actually, we have all these clients coming on board. We need a way to deal with this so that they all get a good level of service, so that they all know what to expect, and that, we're not going to be run off our feet in the back end. So I think that's how it came about for me, was, okay, we need a way to, onboard clients. That is a process. We need a way to manage clients on a monthly basis. That is a process. And if we don't do that, actually, we're going to end up running around like headless chickens. Balls are going to be dropped and stuff's going to not get done. So I think and basically balls were getting dropped. That's how I worked out that we need to get that happening. So it wasn't like okay, I need to productize this. So it was like, shoot, how do we stop the balls being dropped? Okay, we need this system here. We need to plug this in here, and actually just sitting down and looking at all the areas to make sure that actually we got to a point where we were serving at our highest level to every person that came in contact with our business.
Yeah, and it's I guess that's just part of the evolution, isn't it? It almost comes back to the learnings and the things that I guess, unless you had actually paid attention to that, you might, maybe some of the balls had started to drop, but it wasn't enough to be noticeable and to have a negative impact, but you saw it.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
I know enough now to know that I have to fix
that
this.
Exactly. That this is going to cause me an issue in the long term if I don't get this sorted now. Exactly.
Or this is what I need to fix next. And that's not a plug for his
I've not read the book, so I don't know what it says in there, but yeah, you're exactly right. And I think the business is constantly that, to be honest, because your business is constantly changing and morphing, and things are happening. You're bringing on team, whatever that might be, and actually I think it is just an evolution all the way, all the time. And it's just making sure that you can not even be one step ahead of that, but even just a little shuffle ahead of it, so that balls that get dropped don't get dropped for too long, and you can gather them up and you can move on.
100%, because a business is as I call it, it's almost like a living, breathing ecosystem, and it's constantly evolving. It never stands still, and if you stand still, you go backwards. And I think that's an important thing to understand as well. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I never thought I'd enjoy a conversation with an accountant as much as I have, to be honest.
Thank you, Adam.
It's been really insightful, and I really do encourage anybody listening to check out what Annette does. And if you haven't read the Profit First book, go and check out the book before if you want to. But definitely, where would the best place to be if they wanted to go and check out what you guys do?
So one great place, if you want to check out what we do and you are on Facebook, is to come and join my Facebook group called the Uncover Wealth Community. I do free trainings in there every single Tuesday for Training Tuesday. So you can come in there. You just need to type Uncover Wealth Community into the search bar on Facebook, or you can head to the website, which is annetteandco.co.uk.
Awesome. And I will put the links to the to those in the show notes.
Thank you.
It's I do go and have a look. If you're in business, then this just makes sense. So what have you got to lose? Thank you ever so much for joining me, changing my perception of accountants completely, and hopefully everybody else that has listened, because it's been good fun. Thank you ever so much for joining me.
No problem at all, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
Happy fishing.